Hi, I'm Jules from Bonnie Bakery. Today we're making my Russian buttercream recipe. This is my favorite frosting recipe right now because it's really silky and glossy like meringue buttercreams, but it's actually insanely easy and quick to make, and it only really needs 2 ingredients. So the 2 main ingredients to make Russian buttercream are just butter and sweetened condensed milk. That sounds kind of strange for a frosting, but I promise it just gives the best texture and flavor. You're gonna love it. The most important thing with Russian buttercream is that you have your ingredients at the right temperature. So you need your butter to be at room temp, so it's about the same temperature as the condensed milk. That is the biggest mistake I see people make with this recipe when they're making it from the blog, and it can really mess up your frosting. For the base Russian buttercream, that's actually all you need, these 2 ingredients. But for just any kind of standard buttercream, I like to add some vanilla and a pinch of salt, just for a bit more complexity to the flavor. But you can actually add a lot of different flavors to this. It takes on flavoring so well. I've made it with fruit purees, with pistachio paste, and actually I'm going to be using this batch with an espresso powder to make my chocolate espresso cake. The first step is to really whip up the butter. Put it in a stand mixer with the whisk attachment and whip on high speed for 5 full minutes, stopping a few times to scrape down the sides of the bowl. Now turn the mixer down to medium speed and drizzle in the condensed milk. It's super important to do this really gradually. We're adding liquid to fat, so if you add it too quickly, the frosting will split. Once all the condensed milk is added, turn the mixer back up to high speed and whip for a further minute. It should look thick and glossy. The Russian buttercream is technically ready like this, but I like to add some vanilla and a pinch of salt to enhance the flavour. If you're adding any other flavours or colouring to it, this is where you would do it. So that is literally it for making this Russian buttercream. It's so quick and easy, and you can just see it's just got the most gorgeous silky texture. So what you should see is like a really smooth texture here. If your buttercream doesn't quite look like this, if it looks a little bit lumpy or a little bit like scrambled eggs, that's how you know that it is actually curdled. It should be super silky smooth. It should also be thick enough that it's going to be able to hold its shape. It pipes really beautifully and it should easily hold its shape on cupcakes, on a cake or anything like that. So if it's not doing any of those things, then you want to troubleshoot. The most common things that go wrong with this buttercream are either that the buttercream curdles or that the buttercream is too soft and kind of soupy. If it curdles or splits, like I mentioned before, that's usually either because the butter was too cold and it couldn't mix in properly, or it could mean that you added the condensed milk too quickly. If your buttercream does curdle, you don't need to panic, you don't need to throw it out. You can usually fix it. The first thing to try is if you just get maybe a tablespoon or 2 of recently boiled water and whip it in. Sometimes that is enough. If it's not super split, that's enough to bring it back together. If that doesn't work, you can put the whole frosting onto a double boiler and whisk it just while it heats very gently. You'll see it come back together in the pan, and then you're going to take it off the heat, whisk it a little bit more until it's all nice and smooth, and then put it in the fridge to cool down again. And then once it's back down to a good temperature, you are gonna whip it up just like before, and it should come together nicely. The other thing that can go wrong is when the buttercream is too soft or soupy. So this is usually either because the butter got too warm, either before you started or while you were mixing it, or it could be that your butter hasn't been whipped enough. So if your mixer isn't very strong, or if you don't have it on a high enough speed, or you just don't whip it long enough, then it's not gonna have that nice thick consistency we saw earlier. And when you add the buttercream, it'll just go a little bit soft. You can try and fix that too by putting it in the fridge a little longer in case it is the temperature, say 15 minutes or so, and then just whipping it on really high speed. You should see it kind of thicken in front of you as it's going, but either way, your buttercream is not wasted. So that is how to make this really easy buttercream. I am actually going to use this to add some coffee to it to make my chocolate espresso buttercream, but I am going to taste test a spoonful of frosting for you right now. I like this because it's not quite as sickly sweet as American buttercream, and just the texture and mouthfeel is just gorgeous. So I am genuinely just going to eat this off a spoon. Whatever flavour you put into it, it comes through really strongly. So we're really getting that vanilla, which is lovely. And even though, we know there's the sweetened condensed milk in it, it doesn't taste very strongly of that. It's just kind of a lovely, kind of subtle flavour. And that texture is just honestly to die for. I am actually having another spoonful. Eating it like pudding. Thank you so much for watching how to make this easy Russian buttercream. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments or on the blog post. The full recipe is linked in the description below, and I'll see you next week for another bake. Happy baking!